All right, everyone. Happy Friday. Some of you know I teach personal finance on the side and thought it might be helpful to post a video talking about some tips and reminders that could be helpful during these stressful times. Everyone's dealing with this in a different ways. But one thing that a lot of us seem to have in common is that this is causing a lot of budget strain and financial stress. So I'm not trying to make any money off this or sell anything. I hope you find this helpful, but if you would like to talk to me about your own personal situation after, I'm happy to do that. Just leave a comment below that you'd like to talk to me or just send me a message. I do have a disclaimer up here. Just know that this is general financial advice and everyone's situation is different. So some of this may be very obvious, some of this not relevant to everyone, but again, just generic advice. Okay, let's get into it. Budgeting. So, budgeting, everyone's favorite thing to do. Normally, in my presentations, I do a deep dive into exactly how to develop budgets, how to structure them, how to plan for irregular costs, how to approach the subject with your spouse, etc. But for the sake of keeping this video short, let's get into an example of a budget and see what you should be doing during a time like this. And just know that, really quick, back to budgeting, there are so many misconceptions about it. People think that you're living this, restrictive, denying, cheap, penny pinching life where you can't have nice things. And it's just not the truth, because really it's about telling your money where to go, having a plan for your spending. Is the money that you spend, is it in alignment with your priorities? So, it's impossible to accomplish your goals unless you're living below your means. And budgeting is a tool that really helps you to do that. A lot of people think that, I make plenty of money, I don't need to budget. And I promise you the truth is that you cannot out earn bad spending habits. There are athletes and celebrities that make all kinds of money and they file bankruptcy, and you think, how is it possible? But someone who makes $400,000 a year and spends $400,000 a year is living paycheck to paycheck. They're living lavishly, but they are building zero wealth. So know that. And some people say that I know what I'm spending money on. I don't need to budget. And ask yourself if you really do, because if I asked you how much do you think you spend in a month on food, so let's call it groceries and eating out and maybe your daily coffee, most people couldn't come within $200 of getting that right. And if you don't know how much you're spending on food, I promise you, you don't know how much you're spending on gifts, on online shopping, on social entertainments, etc. So just keep that in mind. So, okay, rant over. Getting right into it, let's just say there's a couple, Sarah and John. Sarah gets paid twice a month. Her checks are about $1,700 net. John makes a little bit less than her, so their monthly net income is about $5,800. Below is their little mock budget here, and again, normally I structure it differently. I break things into fixed versus variable expenses, but let's just try to keep this really simple. These are the things that they're spending money on in a normal month, but it is not a normal month right now because we are living in a very different world with a lot of unknowns. So what I think is really important for a couple to do is they should run some what if budget scenarios. So for instance, let's use the exact same starting point of the normal budget, but say that Sarah instead has her income cut by 50%. Their monthly net income is now $4,100 instead of $5,800. So a lot of people, unfortunately, do not have savings that they can just dip into to cover this and live their normal lives. They have to dig into their monthly budget and figure, what do I need to change now to account for this new monthly income that we have? So look at each one of these categories and say there's probably a few of them that you're not going to be able to change no matter what. Your rent, your mortgage, your car payments, your car insurance, you are really not going to be able to change those. So let's just know that those are going to be the same amounts as they are in a normal month. There are some things that you could probably cut out. Again, this is just in an emergency, in a time where you have a dramatic loss in income. Student loans a lot of federal student loans are in forbearance right now. So that means for the next 6 or so months, they are not accruing any interest, and you do not have to make those minimum payments. So that could be something that John and Sarah could say, hey, temporarily, we don't need to pay this. That gets us, some of the way there. Hopefully that they don't have their normal gym fees because those are closed. I'm not trying to tell people what they need to or don't need to spend money on, but this is just an example. These are things that they could potentially drop down. And then there might be things that are a little bit different because of what's happening right now in the world. Their utility bill might be a little higher. So instead of $375, maybe it's $425 because they have to pay a little extra electric bill, or their heat is higher than it normally is. Maybe they decide that they don't need the unlimited data package in their phones anymore, or they're going to be a little more diligent about groceries, or eating out is going to be at a minimum. And with Sarah not working as much or her income cut, there's not as much driving. Gas prices are actually incredibly low right now, so that can be something that's dropped. Um, you get the point. So just making a few adjustments gets them there. And the point of doing something like this is not to incite fear or to make you think that the worst thing is going to happen to you. But sometimes doing this can be incredibly helpful so that should anything ever happen, you're not completely blindsided by it. You know what steps you'll have to take. You have a course of action. You can sleep a little better at night knowing that if this happened, I could do A, B, or C thing. And you could run another budget scenario. You could say, instead of Sarah losing 50% of her income, maybe John gets, he gets laid off, and, hopefully he could file for unemployment, but let's just run that scenario as well. It kind of lets you know that, hey, I'm going to be okay because I know what I would have to do to get myself through a time like this. Okay. So if you are struggling right now, you are dying for cash, and you just cannot figure out how to make ends meet on a monthly basis, here are some things that you could do in the interim over the next couple of months to hopefully help yourself out. One, this goes without saying, but file for unemployment if you are eligible. And recently, the eligibility requirements have been expanded, and the benefit amounts have been increased over the next couple of months. So at a minimum, it is worth looking into if anything has happened to your job or your income. A lot of people aren't thinking about this either, but contact just about anyone who you have a payment to or you owe money to. Landlords, banks, utility companies. A lot of them are willing to work with people during times like this. They understand what we're going through, and whether that means, a little bit of a grace period or reduced payments during these times, people are actually helping one another out, which is really nice. So don't be afraid to give them a call. The worst that they can do is say no. If you have some debts, so for instance, you have something that has a minimum payment of $200 and you've been putting $300 a month on it, drop it down to that 200. We want you to stay current on all your bills, but this can be a way to put, cash into your pockets on a monthly basis that you were shelling out. As we talked about, student loans is kind of an example of this. You don't need to make those minimum payments right now. I'm not telling people to forget about all their debt, but this is just a way to, hey, if I'm worried about putting food on the table this month, I probably don't need to be putting extra on my debt payments. Same exact thing with retirement. If you're worried about how you're going to make your mortgage payment this month, or you're worried about something could happen to your job, stop putting 8% towards your retirement. If you can drop that down a little bit, because that's a way that you can make your paychecks a little larger and again help you. If you normally get a large refund each year come time to do your taxes, that you could adjust your withholdings so that you're adding a little more to your paychecks as well. These are just things that you can kind of do right now over the next couple of months that changes your cash flow situation. There are other ways that you can earn income should anything happen to you. There are a lot of things you can do online. You can tutor, you can translate, you can edit videos, you can do writing. Grocery stores are hiring. And know that there is nothing wrong with taking a job that pays much less than you normally make over a short period of time. So if you normally make, say, $23 an hour, there's nothing wrong with taking a job online that pays $9 an hour, because that can go a long way to helping you get through a difficult time like this. Again, the slide is if you are struggling right now with cash flow, with trying to make ends meet. So this is a good list of things that hopefully you can reference. All right, hopefully by now a lot of people have gotten their stimulus checks. If not, the IRS has launched a website, Get My Payment, where you can log on to, type in your name, your social security, your address, and it gives you kind of the status of your check. how much it is, when it's coming, if they need additional information from you. So that's a really good thing, really good resource to reference right now. But let's just say that you have it, like a lot of people have recently gotten. What to do with it? Again, this is not what you have to do. This is just my 2 cents. If people are wondering what's the best way that they should use this money, first thing you ask yourself is, are you current on your critical bills? I'm talking about mortgage, electric bill, water bill, car insurance, things that you really, really need right now. I'm not talking about your Netflix subscription. I'm talking about things to keep you kind of living, keep your home, keep your family safe. Are you current on these bills? If you're not, this is really simple. Put the check towards that. Those are the necessities in life. Those are what some people call the four walls. Use that money to get current on those bills. If you are current on those bills, ask yourself if you have at least a few months of critical expenses in cash savings. So what do we mean by that? We just ran a budget scenario. Let's take this what if scenario, and that's what, $4,000 right there. 2 months of those expenses would be $8,000. And unfortunately, this step right here, getting that in cash savings, is where just about everyone is going to be. This is the step for them because most families in America have little to no savings. 63% of Americans could not come up with $1,000 cash without missing a major payment or rent or a mortgage or a car payment, or taking a cash advance on a credit card, or borrowing from friends or family, or pulling from retirement accounts. That's the only way that they're coming up with $1,000. That is the definition of living paycheck to paycheck. We want you to have wiggle room financially. We want you to have options. Having an emergency fund and a couple of months of expenses in the bank is a great way to do it. That is what I would do with that check if you don't already have it in place. If you do have it in place, ask yourself, do you have savings to cover some kind of irregular, unavoidable costs? What do I mean by that? Going back to the budget real quick, everything that you see here is not what everyone spends in a year, because there are some things that, the holidays or car insurance that you may pay every 6 months, or property taxes that are paid on a semi-annual basis, or you may have an urgent car repair that you need to have done in order to be able to go to work this month. These are things that don't fit into one of these clean monthly categories, but you will need to do with your money. So make sure that you have money in place for that. And if you don't, again, just put that check into cash savings. The next thing you would ask yourself, if you're okay in that regard, is, are you at all worried about your income status? Is there even a chance that over the next couple of months you could have your income reduced, or you could be furloughed or laid off? If you are worried at all about that, again, simple, just put the money into cash savings. There is nothing like having a buffer, like money in the bank. It allows you to sleep at night. It really does. If all of that is fine, ask yourself, do you have bad debt? Mostly talking about credit card debt here with 15+% interest. If you have that and you're good in all other regards, put that money towards the debt. This would be a nice time if you got an extra $1,000 to knock that down, because credit card debt truly is toxic and it is so hard to come back from mathematically, just given what those interest rates are. If you don't have credit card debt, great, you're in fantastic shape. You got a couple of options. You can support local businesses. This is a great time to, buy a gift card to a local mom and pop store. A lot of the national brands and chains, they're going to be hopefully fine through this, but it's the local companies that are really going to struggle. So consider them, consider your loved ones, pay off other debts. Of course, you can invest it. These are just your choices. So this is kind of my flow chart that I put together. This is not, you do not have to do this. You can, of course, do what you want, but if someone is out there just looking for generic advice on what to do with that check, here's a good starting point. All right, some final things to remember. Please know that your credit card limit should not be treated like your emergency fund. This is something called balance chasing, where credit card companies can reduce your credit lines at any time for any reason, no questions asked. This happened a lot in 2008. 2009. For instance, if you had a $5,000 limit, they can, for whatever reason, lower that down to $1,000. And unfortunately, that makes it really rough on a lot of people who banked on having that $5,000 available to them. They do that during these tough times because they have a lot of default exposure, and they want to limit that because there's a lot of people who are at risk of not being able to pay off their debts. Do not worry about your 401k, the stock market. The stock market is a really bumpy ride. Try to ignore the headlines and stay committed to what you knew was a long-term plan getting in, right? So I've been telling people, treat your 401k like you treat your face. Just don't touch it during this time. Pulling out money just locks in those losses, which right now are only on paper. Market fluctuations happen, including some really, really rough stretches, but the S&P 500 has returned 11% on average over the last 85 years. That includes depressions, recessions, world wars, September 11th, housing crises, 14 different presidents, and of course, pandemics. So just stay the course. Hoard cash, not toilet paper. Just because you'll need something in the future doesn't mean it's the best use of your money today. So would you rather have 2 to 3 weeks worth of food and toiletries and a couple $1,000s in the bank, or have 5 months worth of food and toiletries and nothing in the bank? Give yourself options. Give yourself wiggle room financially. Save the cash. This is a good time to ask yourself if you're comfortable with how with your medical and life insurance policies, where they are. That's another thing that can really help people sleep at night. It's just something to think about. I'm not trying to incite fear, get people to brace for the worst at all times, but it's just a decent time to say, hey, am I comfortable? Do I feel okay with where those policies are at, where my insurances are at? Finally, just be kind to one another. I am not here. I know people didn't come here to get lectured, but it's a really tough time. Everyone is dealing with this in a different way, probably in ways that they're not sharing. So just be nice to one another. Um, Finally, there is a lot of help out there. If you're interested in speaking with me, or I post a lot of budget tips on my Instagram account, Overholt Financial, and you can comment below or send me a message if you'd like to speak with me more about your own personal situation. So again, happy Friday, everyone, and I hope this was helpful.